Fleet Admiral Tay stood alone in his dark observation room, watching the stars. His four eyes blinked slowly as he rewound the ancient footage again. The holographic display in front of him showed humans fighting for the first time. The recording was 300 years old, but it still made his scales rise in alarm. "Play from the beginning," he ordered the computer. The scene showed a Concordat science vessel under attack from the Void Hunters, vicious predators that once terrorized the galaxy. Then, unexpectedly, a small human military ship appeared. What happened next still haunted the galactic records. The humans fought with terrifying efficiency. They didn't panic or flee like sensible beings. They attacked methodically, coordinating with unnatural precision. Within minutes, they had destroyed all the Void Hunters, something the Concordat's best warriors had failed to do for centuries. Tay paused the recording on a human face. The alien creature smiled as it fired its weapons. It was enjoying the battle. "How can they find joy in violence?" he whispered to himself. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open, revealing his aide, Han. "Admiral, forgive the interruption. The Council has called an emergency meeting." "What's happened?" Tay asked, already knowing the answer. "The humans have broken containment. They've developed primitive faster-than-light technology." Tay's secondary heart fluttered in alarm. This was exactly what the Concordat had tried to prevent for centuries. "How?" he demanded. "Unknown." The isolation shield was functioning normally. "They simply figured it out on their own. Sooner than our models predicted." Tay looked back at the frozen image of the grinning human warrior. Of course they had. Humans always exceeded expectations in the worst ways. "The Council meets in 1 hour," Han added. "They're considering upgrading the containment protocols." "Understood. Prepare my shuttle." As Han left, Tay returned to the recording. The human ship had saved the Concordat scientists that day. The humans had been heroes. But when the Concordat scientists studied them more closely, they discovered something horrifying. Humans were the only known sentient species to evolve from predators rather than prey. Every other advanced civilization in the galaxy had evolved from herd animals or foragers, beings who survived by cooperation and caution. Their brains were wired for peace. Violence was physically traumatic for them. But humans? Their brains were wired differently. They could sustain violent thought patterns indefinitely without psychological damage. They enjoyed competition. They fantasized about conflict. Even their entertainment centered around simulated combat. The Concordat had acted quickly 3 centuries ago. They established a quarantine around Earth, a combination of energy shields and patrol ships that prevented humans from developing interstellar travel. It was for the good of the galaxy. Predators could not be allowed to spread among the stars. Tay's shuttle glided through the massive ring world that served as the Concordat's capital. 27 species lived together in harmony here, all descended from peaceful herd ancestors. All except for the handful of humans they kept as consultants, taken as children and raised to be civilized. The council chamber was already full when he arrived. 200 representatives from across the galaxy sat in rising tiers around a central platform. Above them all hung a massive model of the quarantine system surrounding Earth. "Fleet Admiral," greeted Grand Counselor Min, "your assessment, please." Tay stepped onto the platform. "The containment breach is confirmed. A human vessel using primitive FTL technology has left their solar system. My ships intercepted it near their outer planet." "Casualties?" asked a representative from the Lumen people, their bioluminescent skin flickering with anxiety. "None. The humans appeared, surprised to see us. They believe they're making first contact." A murmur ran through the chamber. "They don't know they're quarantined?" asked Counselor Min. "Apparently not. We've kept our presence hidden for generations." "What did you do with the ship?" another counselor asked. "It's being escorted to Outpost 7. The humans are contained but unharmed." "They should be eliminated," said Representative Chul, his voice hard. We've been too lenient with these predators. That is not our way, Counselor Min replied firmly. We are not killers. Neither were the Void Hunters until they met humans, Joel countered. The predator species taught them warfare, and it nearly destroyed us all. Tay cleared his throat. There is more. Our monitoring systems show that Earth is preparing additional FTL vessels. Dozens of them. They plan to explore the galaxy. The chamber erupted in alarmed conversation. Counselor Min raised her hands for silence. Then we must act quickly. Admiral Tay, strengthen the quarantine. Nothing gets in or out. And bring in our human consultant, Jean. If anyone can help us understand these creatures, it's her. As the meeting continued, Tay looked up at the model of Earth, a beautiful blue planet housing the most dangerous species in the known galaxy. For 300 years, they had kept the humans isolated. Now, he feared, everything was about to change. Jean stood at the observation window, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath her. The blue-green planet looked peaceful from space. No one would guess that it housed the most feared species in the galaxy. She pressed her palm against the cool glass. That was her homeworld down there, though she barely remembered it. The Concordat had taken her when she was 3 years old. Now, at 34, Jean was what they called a domesticated human, raised among aliens to study her own kind from a safe distance. Still admiring the view? Director Park asked, entering the room. His tall, slender frame towered over her. Like all Varasi, he had silvery skin and large, gentle eyes. The Varasi had evolved from herd animals who survived by watching for danger. They made excellent scientists and observers. It's strange, Jean said. To be so close yet never allowed to visit. Park made a sympathetic clicking sound with his mouthparts. The council has called for you. It's urgent. Jean turned from the window. The quarantine breach? Yes. A human ship managed to develop FTL travel. The council is concerned. They walked together through the curved hallways of Observation Outpost 9, one of 12 stations orbiting Earth at safe distances. For 3 centuries, the outposts had monitored human development, making sure the dangerous species remained contained. What will they do to the humans on the ship? Jean asked. They're being held for questioning. Beyond that, I don't know. Park hesitated. Jean, some on the council are suggesting stronger containment measures. She understood what that meant. Some wanted to eliminate humans entirely. They're still afraid of us. With reason, Park said gently. You've seen the research. Jean had indeed seen it all. Humans were unique among sentient species. While all other advanced civilizations evolved from prey animals, humans came from predators. Their brains were wired differently. They could sustain aggressive thoughts without psychological damage. They enjoyed competition. They even found violence entertaining. The council chamber on the outpost was small compared to the one on the Ringworld, but still impressive. 7 council representatives sat in a semicircle, their species various but their expressions universally concerned. Counselor Yan, a winged eater, spoke first. Thank you for coming, Jean. We need your perspective on this matter. Jean bowed slightly. I serve the Concordat. A human vessel has breached the quarantine, said Counselor Su, a bioluminescent lumen whose skin flickered with stress patterns. Tell us, how should we respond? Let me speak with them, Jean suggested. They don't know about the quarantine. They think they're making first contact. Impossible, said Counselor Kim, a reptilian Drax. No human can know of our existence. It would alter their development. Their development is already altered, Jean argued. They've achieved FTL travel. The quarantine has failed. The counselors exchanged worried looks. Show her, Counselor Yan said finally. A holographic display activated in the center of the room. It showed neural scans of different species under stress. The prey species, Varasi, Lumen, Eater, and others, all showed similar patterns: fear, flight response, group protection instincts. The human brain lit up differently. The predator patterns were clear: focus, aggression, tactical planning, even pleasure centers activating during simulated combat. "This is why we fear your kind," said Counselor Sue. "You're hardwired for violence in ways we are not." "We're more than just killers," Jean protested. "Humans create art, music, philosophy. We heal and build." "Wolves who paint are still wolves," Director Park said quietly from behind her. The door to the chamber suddenly opened. A young Verociade rushed in, clearly distressed. "Forgive the interruption," he gasped. "We've detected multiple launches from Earth. They're sending more ships." The council erupted in alarmed conversation. Jean felt her heart race. This was exactly what they feared: humans spreading among the stars. "We must strengthen the containment field," Counselor Kim declared. "Nothing gets in or out." "And the humans who already breached it?" asked another counselor. A heavy silence fell over the room. Jean knew what some were thinking. It would be safer to eliminate the threat entirely. "Let me see them," she said firmly. "The humans from the ship. I can explain our situation, make them understand why contact is dangerous." "And if they don't understand?" Counselor Yan asked. "If they react with violence, as your species tends to do?" Jean straightened her shoulders. "Then I'll deal with them myself. I'm human too, after all." The counselors looked at her with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Could one predator control another? It was a risk. "Very well," Counselor Sue said finally. "You will travel to Outpost 7 and assess these humans. But be warned, there are factions within the Concordat who believe more permanent solutions are necessary." As Jean left the chamber, Director Park fell into step beside her. "You should know," he said quietly, "there are rumors of a group called the Purifiers. They believe humans are too dangerous to exist, even in quarantine." Jean felt a chill. Would the council allow that? Not officially. But if humans begin spreading into space. Park didn't finish the sentence. Jean looked back through a viewport at Earth, beautiful and oblivious below. She had to find a way to save her people, both from themselves and from those who feared them. Dr. Lee watched the final preparations for launch with barely contained excitement. After 15 years of work, humanity's first faster-than-light spacecraft was ready. The Pathfinder wasn't large, just enough room for 5 crew members, but it would change human history forever. "Engine status?" he asked, eyes fixed on the ship through the control room window. "All systems nominal," replied Navigator Hyun, her fingers dancing across the console. "FTL drive is stable. We're good to go." Dr. Lee nodded and addressed the 3 other crew members on the launch platform. "This is it. Everything we've worked for. You all know the risks, but the rewards." He paused, looking at each face. "We'll be the first humans to travel beyond our solar system." None of them knew they would also be the first humans to discover they'd been imprisoned. 2 hours later, the crew was strapped into their acceleration couches as final countdown began. 10, 9, 8. The computer's voice echoed through the cabin. Navigator Hyun looked over at Dr. Lee. "Nervous, sir?" "Terrified," he admitted with a smile. "But in a good way." 3, 2, 1. Ignition. The conventional engines roared to life, pushing the Pathfinder up through Earth's atmosphere. Once they cleared orbit, Dr. Lee gave the command they'd all been waiting for. "Initiate FTL sequence." Hyun entered the commands. "FTL drive powering up. Ready in 3, 2, 1. The stars outside the viewport stretched into lines, then vanished altogether as the Pathfinder slipped into FTL space. The journey to the edge of the solar system would take only minutes instead of years. "It works," whispered Science Officer Min, his voice filled with awe. "It actually works." When they dropped back into normal space beyond Pluto's orbit, they expected emptiness. What they got was anything but. "Multiple contacts," shouted Hyun, alarm filling her voice. "Large vessels, dozens of them, everywhere." Dr. Li stared in shock at the viewscreen. Ships of impossible design surrounded them, vast and alien. Some were larger than cities, with strange geometric shapes that seemed to bend light around them. Are they extraterrestrial?" asked Communications Officer June, her voice barely a whisper. "They must be," Dr. Li replied, equally stunned. "Open a channel. Standard greeting protocol." Before June could comply, the Pathfinder shuddered as an energy beam locked onto them. "We're caught in some kind of tractor beam," Hyun reported. "They're pulling us in." Aboard the Concordat flagship, Commander Song of the Purifier faction watched the human vessel with cold calculation. His scaled face showed no emotion as he addressed his subordinates. "The quarantine has failed," he stated flatly. "As we predicted." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Bei, approached cautiously. "Sir, Admiralty has ordered the human ship to be taken to Outpost 7 for assessment." "Of course he has," Song replied with disdain. "The Admiral still believes these predators can be reasoned with. 300 years of observation has taught him nothing." Song turned away from the viewscreen, his decision made. "Prepare our ships. We'll need to move quickly before the Council vacillates further. The human world must be cleansed before they spread." They looked troubled. "Sir, that would mean eliminating billions of sentients. The Council would never approve. The Council fears making difficult choices. That's why we exist." Song's four eyes narrowed. "The predator species cannot be allowed to join galactic society. You've seen what they're capable of." On a smaller Concordat vessel heading toward the scene, Jean received word of the human ship's capture. She rushed to the bridge, heart pounding. "I need to speak with them," she told Captain Nam. "Before anyone else." The captain, a Tustvorex, looked doubtful. "My orders are to transport you to Outpost 7. The humans will be questioned there." "By then it might be too late," Jean insisted. "I know my kind. If they feel threatened, they'll react badly. Let me talk to them first, explain what's happening." Nam hesitated, then nodded. "Very well. We'll establish communications once we're in range." Back on the Pathfinder, the crew watched in terrified fascination as they were pulled toward an enormous ship. Through the viewport, they could see dozens of alien species moving about inside the larger vessel. "They look peaceful," June observed. "No visible weapons." "That doesn't mean they're friendly," warned Security Officer Gill, his hand hovering near the sidearm he'd insisted on bringing. The communications system suddenly activated, showing the face of a human woman. The crew stared in shock. "This is Jean of the Galactic Concordat," she said. "Dr. Li, I need you to listen carefully. Your lives and potentially the lives of everyone on Earth depend on it." Dr. Li leaned forward, confused. "You're human. How are you with these aliens? There's no time to explain everything. But you need to know humanity isn't making first contact today. We're breaking a quarantine that has existed for 300 years. As the Pathfinder was drawn into the alien hangar bay, Jin's words echoed in their minds. They weren't explorers making history. They were prisoners breaking free. And some of their jailers weren't happy about it. Dr. Li stood before the Concordat Council, still trying to process everything he had learned in the past 24 hours. The circular chamber reminded him of the United Nations on Earth, except here, the delegates weren't all human. Beings with scales, feathers, multiple limbs, and even floating gas sacks sat in tiered rows, all watching him with expressions he couldn't begin to interpret. Jean stood beside him, acting as both translator and guide. She was human, but different somehow, raised among aliens, comfortable with their ways. "The Council recognizes Dr. Li of Earth," announced Grand Counselor Du, a tall being with silver skin and enormous eyes. "You may speak." Li took a deep breath. "I want to understand why. Why has Earth been kept isolated for 300 years? What did we do to deserve imprisonment?" Jean translated his words, though many of the council members seemed to understand him directly. After a brief murmur of conversation, Counselor Du responded. "It was not punishment," Jean translated. It was containment. Containment? Lee's voice rose in anger. You've been containing us? Like a disease? Like a predator, clarified Jean, her voice soft. The Concordat fears what humans are capable of. Another council member, a being with feathers and a beak-like mouth, added something that made Jean pause before translating. Counselor Quan says your species was quarantined for the galaxy's protection after an incident 300 years ago. A human ship encountered a Concordat research vessel under attack from a species called the Void Hunters. Screens around the chamber displayed ancient footage, a small human military vessel engaging with strange, dark ships. The human craft fought with impressive efficiency, destroying all attackers. Your people saved our researchers, Jean continued translating. But in doing so, you revealed something that terrified the Concordat. You fought too well. Too eagerly. Lee watched the footage in confusion. We saved them, and they feared us for it? You don't understand, Jean said. Every advanced species in the galaxy evolved from prey animals. Their brains are wired for cooperation, caution, and peace. Violence is physically traumatic for them. Except humans, Lee concluded, beginning to understand. Yes. We evolved from predators. Our brains handle aggression differently. We can sustain violent thought patterns without psychological breakdown. The Concordat had never encountered a predator species that achieved space travel before. The footage changed to show neural scans. Jean pointed to the differences, explaining how human brains lit up with pleasure responses during combat situations, how they instinctively sought tactical advantages, how they could compartmentalize killing. The Concordat observed Earth for decades after first contact, Jean explained. They watched our wars, our sports, even our entertainment. Everything confirmed their fears. Humans are uniquely dangerous. So they caged us, Lee said bitterly. They contained a potential threat, Jean corrected. The Concordat doesn't think in terms of punishment. They think in terms of safety. The council chamber grew quiet as Counselor Du spoke again, longer this time. Jean listened carefully before translating. The quarantine was not meant to be permanent. The Concordat hoped that over time, human society would evolve beyond its predatory instincts. Some believe that has happened. Others disagree. A reptilian counselor named Sim stood up, speaking heatedly. Jin's expression grew troubled as she translated. Counselor Sim says your technological progress has been alarming. Humans have advanced faster than any known species. He believes this supports the theory that predator species are inherently more aggressive in all pursuits, not just warfare. Before Lee could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing a fleet of ships moving into formation. What's happening? Lee asked, watching the council members react with obvious distress. Jin's face had gone pale. She grabbed her communicator and spoke rapidly into it before turning to Lee. It's the Purifiers, a radical faction within the Concordat. They've always believed humans should be eliminated rather than contained. She paused, listening to her communicator again. They're moving toward Earth. With planet-killer weapons. The council erupted in alarmed conversation. Jean pulled Lee aside as guards rushed into the chamber. This is worse than I feared, she whispered. The Purifiers must have been planning this for years. They were just waiting for an excuse. How much time do we have? Lee asked, his mind racing. Hours, maybe less. The Concordat fleet is mobilizing to intercept them, but they're divided on whether to protect Earth or not. What can we do? Jean looked around the chaotic chamber, then back at Lee. We need to get back to Earth. Now. Why? Lee asked, confusion mixing with his fear. Because if the Purifiers succeed, your world dies. And if the Concordat truly understood what humans are capable of, they would know that the most dangerous place to be is between humans and a threat to their home. As they rushed from the chamber, Lee caught a final glimpse of the holographic display. The Purifier fleet was massive, already entering Earth's solar system. He wondered how his peaceful research mission had triggered the potential extinction of his species. And he wondered if the Concordat was right to fear humans after all. Jean stood at the viewport of the Concordat cruiser as it dropped out of FTL space near Earth. What she saw made her blood run cold. The Purifier fleet had arrived first, dozens of warships positioning themselves around her homeworld. Several had already begun bombarding Earth's primitive defense satellites. "We're too late," Captain Sue said, his scaled face grim. The Verasi commander had been one of the few willing to help, bringing his ship at maximum speed. "No," Jean insisted. "Those are just the advanced ships. Their planet killer isn't here yet." Dr. Lee joined them at the viewport, his face pale. "Those energy weapons, our defenses can't stop them." Jean turned to Captain Sue. "We need to contact Earth's governments. Tell them what's happening." "The Council explicitly forbade that," Sue replied. "The quarantine. The quarantine is broken," Jean shouted. "Millions will die if we don't act now." Dr. Lee placed a hand on her shoulder. "Jean is right. Earth deserves a chance to defend itself." Reluctantly, Sue nodded. "Very well. But the humans have no weapons that can harm Concordat ships." "Then give us yours," Lee said simply. Sue's large eyes widened in shock. "That is absolutely forbidden. No quarantined species can be given advanced technology." "Then watch us die," Jean snapped. After tense negotiations, they reached a compromise. Captain Sue would provide a limited number of energy weapons to Earth's military forces. Just enough to have a fighting chance against the Purifier Advance Fleet while the main Concordat forces mobilized. 2 hours later, Jean found herself in an underground military base beneath what had once been her hometown. She had never set foot on Earth before today. Now she might witness its destruction. "The weapons are incompatible with our systems," said General Yoon, eyeing the alien devices. "We'd need days to integrate them." "We have minutes," Jean replied. "Your soldiers will have to use them manually." "It's impossible. The learning curve." "Let me see one," interrupted a young lieutenant named June. She picked up one of the energy rifles with careful hands. "How does it work?" Jean quickly explained the basics. To everyone's surprise, June began operating the weapon with remarkable speed. "It's intuitive," June said. "Like a video game." Similar scenes played out across the globe as human soldiers adapted to alien technology with shocking speed. What would take other species months of training, humans were mastering in hours. In orbit, the main Purifier fleet arrived. At its center was the Planet Killer, a massive ship designed to crack Earth's crust with gravitational weapons. "It's starting," Dr. Lee said, watching the monitors as the massive ship moved into position. Captain Sue received a transmission from the Concordat fleet. "They're still debating whether to intervene," he reported with disgust. "Politics while a world burns." Jean made a decision. "Give us your ship." "What?" Sue asked in shock. "Your crew can evacuate to the surface. Let humans pilot your ship against the Planet Killer." "That's madness. The ship's systems are incredibly complex." Dr. Lee stepped forward. "We're fast learners. What happened next would change the galaxy's view of humans forever." A skeleton crew of Earth's best pilots, led by Dr. Lee, took control of the Concordat vessel. Their instinctive grasp of combat tactics, combined with their willingness to take risks no other species would consider, made them formidable opponents. Jean stayed on the ground, coordinating Earth's defense forces. Human soldiers using alien weapons engaged the Purifier ground troops that had landed to establish weapon platforms. The humans fought with a ferocity that stunned their enemies. In space, Lee's improvised crew executed maneuvers that Captain Sue had declared impossible. They darted between the larger Purifier ships, causing chaos and confusion. When the main Concordat fleet finally arrived, they found humans had already crippled half the Purifier vessels. "Impossible," whispered the Concordat admiral as he watched humans operate technology they'd never seen before with deadly efficiency. The battle ended when Lee's crew managed to disable the Planet Killer's main weapon, allowing the Concordat forces to capture it intact. The remaining purifiers surrendered. 3 days later, Jean stood before the full Concordat Council alongside Dr. Lee and Captain Sue. "The evidence is undeniable," Counselor Du was saying. "Humans are indeed as dangerous as we feared. Their capacity for violence, their adaptability, their predatory instincts, all confirmed." Jin's heart sank. After everything, they still feared her people. "However," continued the counselor, "they are also exactly what this galaxy needs." A murmur of surprise ran through the chamber. "For too long, we peaceful species have struggled against threats like the Void Hunters and the Purifiers. Perhaps what we need is a predator on our side, a guardian species to protect the peaceful." As the Council voted to formally end the quarantine and invite humanity to join the galactic community under careful conditions, Jean felt a strange mix of pride and concern. Humans would be welcome not because they had overcome their violent nature, but because of it. "Do you think they're right to fear us?" Dr. Lee asked her quietly. Jean watched the council members, still nervous in the presence of humans. "Yes," she admitted. "But maybe that fear can become respect instead."